Hi, Michael Weber here, Artistic Director of Chicago's Porchlight Music Theatre. We're so excited to be introducing to you the next edition of Porchlight's Off the Porch developmental series with the Chicago and world premiere of the new one-person musical Shake It Away, the Ann Miller story. With me today is author and star Kayla Boye, who's probably best known right now to Chicago audiences for her extraordinary work, Call Me Elizabeth, which was a one-woman show about the life of Elizabeth Taylor. It started as a pandemic video that appeared with Broadway on demand in 2022 and then transferred to being the live show that it always was supposed to be at the Hollywood Fringe Festival, and has gone on to sold out appearances off Broadway as well as internationally from Europe to Mexico. With me today is Kayla Boye. Welcome, Kayla.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we're so happy to have you. Let's start at the most obvious part. This is called Shake It Away, the Ann Miller story. For the very few people who may have never heard of her or encountered this extraordinary performer, who was Ann Miller?
Ann Miller might be best known to audiences for her MGM era. She was an extremely talented dancer, specifically in the genre of tap dance. She appeared in mega movie musicals such as Kiss Me Kate, Easter Parade, On the Town. The list goes on and on. But actually, MGM only represents a very small portion of her career. She had started performing at the age of 13 and was discovered by Lucille Ball, of all people, at a nightclub and was signed to a contract at RKO. And then she went and did Broadway in one of George White's Scandals editions and came back to Hollywood with a contract at Columbia. And it was only after that contract that she ended up at MGM. And she had a great career at MGM and was there until the studio system collapsed, essentially, and found a second career on the variety show circuit, and then ended up replacing Angela Lansbury. She was the sixth Mame in the original Broadway company of Mame. And following that production, she had a long life on the road, doing the Star Summer Stock circuit with the Kenley Players, which was from my hometown, Warren, Ohio. And she did Hello Dolly, Anything Goes, Panama Hattie, and was just kind of this, figure on the summer stock circuit. And then audiences from live theater might know her more recently for her longtime touring appearance in Sugar Babies, the vaudeville burlesque send-up with Mickey Rooney, which played Broadway and then went on to a 10-year tour, honestly, playing the West End, America, and Los Angeles. So she had a very lengthy career, and I love that she was able to find a second chapter following her time in movies.
This takes place at a very specific moment for somebody who made their real fame in film musicals. So take us to the moment where you, as the playwright, have decided to go, here's the moment we're going to encounter Ann Miller.
I came to this moment in a way based upon the environment that we're all currently dealing with in entertainment, which seems to be a full sea change in the way systems have been to date. And so in my mind, I said to myself, what was that time like for anyone that had been in the star circuit, in the studio system? And kind of the moment that it all came to a head was the 1970 auction at the MGM backlot. In 1970, MGM was divesting itself of its backlot properties that had been sold, a lot of the lots, and ended up selling all of the costumes and the showboat from the musical Showboat and everything you could think of. It was all Hollywood history from the biggest and best musicals, and it was all being auctioned off. So I have auction booklet from that day. May 17th was the day where the wardrobe was being sold off of all the iconic costumes. And Anne was present that day, along with many other stars, including Debbie Reynolds, who ended up saving quite a bit of those items, including several costumes from Singing in the Rain. She helped use that auction to start her collection, which she ended up putting on display in her Vegas casino when that was in existence. But she really wanted to preserve Debbie Reynolds, all of these costumes for the Academy Museum, which ended up opening a few years ago, but she wasn't around to see the benefits of all of her work to preserve all of these things. So it takes place that day and finds herself seeing all of her costumes and others iconic pieces being sold off, including the ruby slippers, Judy Garland's slippers from The Wizard of Oz. So high drama, lots of angst and tension and anxiety of seeing like all of Hollywood's history, MGM's at least. But for Anne, this is a chance for her to relive her MGM years. So we see her on an empty soundstage. She has left the auction for a minute. But then she realizes, what a wonderful experience she had being part of that golden age of movie musicals. And so she goes through some of the highlights of her MGM years. We see her going back to the very start, how she learned to tap dance from Bill Robinson, Bojangles himself, and how she ends up finding her way forward beyond 1970. It's a look at a really pivotal time in Hollywood history and also a pivotal time for performers that were trying to find their next act.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a unique time in show business and a group of performers who have been brought up with a certain set of rules from Fred Astaire to Gene Kelly, Judy Garland, all of these, not only the actors, but the production people, the directors, the producers of a certain way of working. And now we're in the early 70s when on the rise are this whole new wave of independent films, names like Martin Scorsese and Francis Ford Coppola are the young, hot, new vision. And so this era of when movie musicals like Hello Dolly and Dr. Dolittle and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang are just flopping, flopping, flopping. You've picked a moment where there's a group of people at very high emotional and logical um, collision are happening, trying to find what is next for me in a world in which the audience is essentially rejecting what was so important to us. I think about the movie That's Entertainment, I think was probably one of the first times that a lot of audience members were really able to get a look at the condition of what that backlot was at that time. And when you see Fred Astaire walking along where the train is in and it's all just broken down, it must have been pretty shocking for audiences as well.
Oh yeah, shocking for audiences, and I'm sure the stars themselves to see, seeing Mickey Rooney in front of Andy Hardy's house and it's overgrown with weeds and that train shot from the bandwagon. It's all it's this decrepit old train, and Fred's like, "Well, this is where we did that. Glad we had it." It's really heartbreaking. And then thank God they cut to like the clips of the musical movies that were set there. But it's really a whole shift in movie making that was taking place at that time. They didn't require all of the backlots because production had been reduced to a certain number of films per year. They were farming it out to independent filmmakers. Even now, as we're seeing in Hollywood, production is down 40%. And these backlots it's really eerily reminiscent of what was happening at that time. So to go back to, if you've ever gone back to a place where you grew up, because this is also where they grew up as humans, many of them. There was the Little Red Schoolhouse on MGM's lot where the child stars like Judy Garland would take school lessons and then go off and shoot a movie. And Debbie Reynolds would take lessons there. They really got their formative training and upbringing from the MGM star system. And that was hard for them to reconcile, how movies were changing at this time. Anne was a person who was so staunchly embedded the MGM way. We knew her as someone that never went out without the lipstick on and the hair done and the earrings, because that's what they were told. That's what the public expects to see is movie stars. And that was imprinted on her. I mentioned this in the play. When she first moved to Hollywood with her mother, Jean Harlow was walking down the street. That's how early they were there. And she looked to Anne like Jean Harlow should look, this angel movie star. And she was very kind to Anne as a little girl and said, I think you could be in pictures. And that moment, I mean, that's why the aura of these massive studios was so appealing, especially in the Depression and in times where we're looking for an escape. It's supposed to be the best of us, the magic, dreamland. And it was really hard for everyone to see that kind of go by the wayside when the studios collapsed. That is not to say there were bad things about the studio system, right? The actors were treated almost as indentured servants, with lengthy contracts, not being able to choose the roles they wanted to do. So there were good and bad things about the way it operated. But for many, as Anne said, which is why she kind of became a pseudo ambassador for That's Entertainment and MGM history, it saved a lot of people from poverty. It gave actors and artists a living wage and consistent employment, which we don't have today.
So one of the things about Am Miller from when I've seen her on YouTube in interviews on the Mike Douglas show or things like this is to your point that you're making earlier. She was somebody who was always the star, always presented perfectly. The makeup was perfect, the hair was perfect. The whole sort of attitude was always a smile and something encouraging. But what I love about the play is that you really start getting into some of the specifics that maybe people don't know about somebody who was so coiffed and so trained to present an image. Your interest here really is to not only show that that was real, but that there was a real side to who the person was.
Absolutely. And she had a really hard upbringing. She came from a broken home. Her mom and her started out in a one-room studio in LA, dumpster diving for food because that's how bad it was. And she finally started making money by playing talent shows in the Elks Club and fraternity houses, that kind of thing. And she would spend all day rehearsing in a rehearsal studio and in rehearsal clothes and just beating herself up trying to get these steps right. So when she had the chance to go out on the town and get all dolled up and be glamorous, it was fun. It was a release. It was enjoyable and what you did. And that was a time too when we as a society valued the idea of, as she said, glamour and mystique. That was a favorite saying of hers. So I think we've also kind of moved away from that in general, post-COVID too. We all go out in our sweatpants and no makeup and our hair's, what it is. And she would be probably horrified to see how things have changed even since the 70s when blue jeans were scandalous and long ponytails. She really thought that was her job to present that image. And it was also a way for her, as a dancer, and I empathize with this, you have routines, you have a sense of discipline, and that is what gets you through the day. She went through a lot of traumatic experiences, which I will touch upon in the show, but you see why she would hang on to those rituals of doing the hair and makeup and putting on the face because she was battling a lot of dark things while on the outside exuding this smile sensibility of positive energy. And for her, entertaining people and connecting to people through show business was her reason for being. And how exciting to connect with audiences after all you've been performing is a camera as an audience, to be able to do live theater and see people immediately beaming and just being happy in a room together is really what she lived for and why you see her career lasted almost until she passed away. I mean, she did Follies at Paper Mill in the early 2000s, and she was in Mulholland Drive. I went down that rabbit hole when David Lynch passed away this spring. So she really kept going to make people happy through entertaining. And I think that's a theme that we all kind of need right now is just something positive and escapism and just remembering what it means to be happy and joyful.
And unlike Elizabeth Taylor in Call Me Elizabeth, Ann Miller made her stock in trade doing musicals. So are there going to be moments of music in Shake It Away?
Yes, there will be music and dancing because that is what she was known for. So right now I'm in the process of working with Linda Madonia, our music director, and Tammy Mader, our choreographer, to put together those moments for this project. And there are 5 songs I'm looking at right now, some of her biggest hits that audiences will immediately recognize and be able to place. But they also come from moments in her life. So she might be referring to a movie that she was in, and that is her signature song from that movie. Or you might hear a song from the golden age of musicals that, she just was drawn to because it kind of became her anthem in life. So yeah, it's a definitely more challenging than Call Me Elizabeth, which was just me talking. And as a solo show, you have to sing and dance and talk at the same time. Maybe not at the same time, but there's a lot more components involved in this one. So as a performer, building up that stamina will be very important to be able to do this all the time.
We're so excited at Porchlight, and especially as part of the Off the Porch series, is that Chicago audiences are going to be the first to get a sneak preview of a show that's not only a work in progress and in development, but is already booked to be going to the Hollywood Fringe Festival immediately after we do uh, our preview at Porchlight on June 1st. And then it is scheduled to go off Broadway, just as Call Me Elizabeth did, and then to Europe for the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. We're so excited to be part of the early stages of development of something that already promises to have a wonderful future ahead of it that hopefully some of even the audiences that'll be able to get to see it at Porchlight might follow you and either go to Hollywood or go see it off Broadway or go see it if they happen to be also going to the legendary Edinburgh Fringe. What as we wrap up here, what are you hoping to be able to gain from getting an audience into that rehearsal room with you after the workshop process has been completed and you're about to say, hey, I'm going to open the door and let some people see the work we've been doing?
Being able to have the chance to see how things land in terms of pacing, energy, and as a writer, if anything seems unclear or needs to be more specific, that is really informative because I'm not just performing it, I also wrote it. So I am lucky to have the chance to be in a room and kind of test it out and make revisions. So that is invaluable knowledge. And with my past work, I had done invited reading and had the chance to really spend a lot of time developing the show before taking it on the road. This time feels like, okay, we're rehearsing and then we're going. So it's really valuable. And I'm so lucky to have Porchlight and Off the Porch being so gracious in letting me have this opportunity to test the material out. And also, as a performer to be able to feel what it's like to be in an intimate room because this is playing on the road to intimate festival spaces. So it's going to be, like you're having a one-on-one with Anne. It's not going to be a huge, massive theater, at least to start. So being in the room at Porchlight is just the perfect setting for this process.
Well, we're so excited to have Shake It Away, the Ann Miller story is the next edition of the Off the Porch series. Thank you, Kayla Boye, and we hope that many of you will be able to join us on June 1st in the Porchlight Rehearsal Studios to be the first to discover what we know is going to be a wonderful one-person musical about one of the great artists of the American musicals, both on stage and on film, Ann Miller. Thanks for being with us, Kayla Boye.
Thanks for having me.